Continuing on with parent pages, I want to point out a couple other quick items. So I have parent pages, two different sets of parent pages made up, and I've applied them to parent A is applied to page 2 and 3. Parent B is applied to page 4 and 5. So I get into laying out my page, and for the sake of argument, let's say that I want to put a gray bar that runs across the bottom of this particular page. And what we can see is that when I do that, it covers up my footer text. And maybe that isn't what I want. Well, we can correct this fairly easily. Remember that InDesign has layers, just like Illustrator, Photoshop, any other Adobe app has. And I'm in the typography layout. So if I look down here along the side, about 3/4 of the way down, there's a layers link. If I open that up, we'll see that I only have one layer, which means that everything on my parent pages and on my content pages are all on this layer. And I can't modify the content on my parent pages without going in and doing it in the parent page. I can't just decide to pull this to the front of this one particular page. So what I like to do to combat this is to work with at least 2 layers in my document. So within the layer panel, everything's on page 1 right now. I'm just going to add a new layer, and this layer I'm going to call my parent page items. Let's say OK. And now if I go back over here to my pages panel, I'm going to open up my A parent and select my footer copy, and I'm just going to cut it. So edit, cut, and then come back over here to my layers panel, select parent page items, and do edit, paste in place. That'll paste them on this parent page items layer. And I'm going to go back and do the same real quick to my footer content. Just going to cut that. Come back over here to my layers, paste in place. And then I'm going to lock that down. So what that does is anything that I place on this parent page items layer is going to appear above everything else, including my content, which is all going to fall here. I like to lock this layer just to be sure I don't do any additional work on it. And now when I come back over here to my pages panel, if I go to page 2, remember before this was hidden and now it sits on top. So I can continue working with my document. So we can use our layers not only within our pages, but we can use it to help organize the hierarchy of the hierarchy of stuff within our parent pages as well. One last thing to point out, we can create as many parent pages as we want. So let's say that this is not going to be a light gray. Let's say it's going to be a fairly dark color. And it's hard to see that text against that. I can go back to my pages. I'm just going to copy this time. And one of the drawbacks of locking these layers is that I have to remember to go back and unlock it in order to work on it. So I've selected that text at the bottom. I'm just going to go to edit, copy, And then I'm going to create a new parent. This will be C. And I'm going to call this, since this original parent I didn't change the name on, I'm just going to call this parent reverse. Say OK. And then paste in place that footer copy that I just selected. And then I'm going to go in here into my swatches, select that type, and I'm going to change that to white. And I'm going to go back down here to my layers panel and relock that to be sure we don't modify it later on. And now when I come back over here, I can select pages 2 and 3. I can select my C parent reverse. I'm just going to select the left-hand side of it, place it there, and you'll see that now it has that reverse type. So I can mix and match parent pages. So keep that in mind. You may or may not want to go to that extreme, to that extent. It's not required, but just know that you can, and that's a technique you can use. And then one last thing to point out, if I'm working on parent pages and I decide that I'm going to have, on this particular parent page, let's say I'm going to have a black bar that runs across the top. Let's say it's just going to come out this far. And I'll just fill that with black. When I place content on a parent page, anything if I span 2 pages like this, if I decide that I just want to use one of these 2 pages as a parent for a particular page, it is always going to carry with it anything that extends beyond it. So I've done this. If I come back over here to my pages, you'll see that on my B pages, that extends across. And as it should, these both have parent B applied to them. But if I were to decide for some odd reason that I want to replace the right-hand page with the right-hand page of parent A, I can do that. But this black bar still stays in place because it's actually a part of the left-hand page of parent B. So to make sure that this doesn't cause me problems later on, what I actually want to do is make sure that whenever I lay out individual pages, that I treat them separately rather than one giant group. So I'm going to copy that, edit, copy, paste in place, and then I'll just slide it over here onto page 2. Zoom in here so I can see what I'm doing. This should extend no further than the edge of the page. And I'll just clean this up while I'm at it. So I have the same look, but if I come back down here now to parent B, you'll see that that bar no longer extends across onto the second page. So you can mix and match parent pages. I don't know that personally I ever really do that as a standard practice. A lot of times it's the exception. But just know that when you do that, you need to make sure you treat this parent as 2 separate items. so that when you do your mixing and matching, your pages behave the way you want them to.